Well then, let's begin another information hour. Here's the information. Ukrainian drones and counter-drone systems have become a strategic resource for the state and are already being used as a tool of geopolitical influence. This statement was made by Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Andrii Sybiga, in an interview with Ukrinform. According to the head of the Foreign Ministry, this has strengthened Ukraine's role not only in Europe but also in the Middle East.
Our drones and counter-drone systems are, in essence, our Ukrainian oil, our strategic resource, which must be converted into a clear national Ukrainian interest to strengthen our army, our economy, and, of course, to bring about lasting peace. Andrii Sybiga, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, in an interview with Ukrinform.
Ukraine will expand its drone agreements with international partners. This was stated by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, during a conversation with journalists. According to him, such agreements will include drones, electronic warfare equipment, and a comprehensive defense system. Zelensky emphasized that the key advantage of Ukraine is the experience of its military personnel. He noted that the country must be prepared for any challenges, even with a limited number of air defense systems, such as the Patriot, for example.
If we want Ukraine to be treated at a high level, it's not just about drones, it's about our specialists, our military. It's the combination of experienced military personnel from both the private and public sectors within a single system. This is exactly what needs to be offered as an export for the long term, so that the private sector, the state, and our military are all provided for. Today, we have begun the next steps with 3 countries. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, during a conversation with journalists.
The number of drones and interceptors that Ukraine is capable of producing is constantly growing. It may be possible to achieve a surplus in the coming months. This was stated by political consultant and Ukrainian Armed Forces serviceman Oleksandr Antoniuk on the Freedom TV channel. In addition, according to him, Ukraine is already able to export maritime drones.
We can definitely, yes, already move toward exporting maritime drones. That is because of the number of combat missions we are carrying out in the Black Sea and the number of drones we can use and produce. The fact is, besides the Magura drones, there are other developments as well. At least that's what I know, right? Basically, that's for sure. We can already, regarding this unique work of art, military art, we really can move in this direction. Now, of course, when we are discussing the subject of interceptor drones, well, I think we still can't talk about a significant surplus, especially considering the current intensity of the situation. But with the amount of funding and if the opportunity to set up mass production is properly established, first of all, this will reduce the cost of the product itself, and I think in the near future we could even reach a surplus.
We'll discuss this topic further. Joining us now is Volodymyr Solovian, head of the Military Threat Analysis Group at the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. Welcome to the broadcast. Glad to see you.
Hello.
Volodymyr, could you help us interpret the statement made by Andrii Sybiga, the head of the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that these Ukrainian drones, UAV technologies, and accordingly the experience of Ukrainian military personnel in using them have already become a geopolitical tool? So in what way should this tool work?
Ukraine is looking for its own unique niches in the global arms markets. And today we see a trend that is positive for Kiev, where the countries of the Persian Gulf, having realized that the threat from Iran will persist for weeks or more likely even months, if not years, since we understand that without a ground operation, overthrowing the current regime is impossible, and accordingly, Iran's ability to produce and launch Shahed-type drones will remain. All the more so, it is worth recalling the intensification of cooperation with Moscow and the deliveries via the Caspian Sea. At present, the Allies are practically unable to control this corridor, and thus we understand that the threat of drone attacks will persist in the near future. And the countries of the Persian Gulf have taken note of Ukraine's experience. And while previously there was considerable skepticism about cooperating with Ukraine, and above all there were concerns about the reaction from Iran and Moscow, today, given that all those negative scenarios are already actually playing out, the restrictions that previously held them back from more active investment in Ukraine's defense industry are in fact no longer relevant. And we can see that such cooperation, namely the financing of Ukrainian development programs, the scaling up of interceptor drone production, and the deployment of this production in other countries that can use it for their own needs, all of this has quite good prospects under the current circumstances. And for its part, Ukraine will, of course, try to attract new technologies and funding, since according to President Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine already has the capacity to scale up production of just interceptor drones alone to more than 2,000, and by some estimates, maybe even 2,500 per day, but there is not enough funding for this. Consequently and naturally, Ukraine remains fundamentally and primarily interested in ensuring the continuous and uninterrupted supply of these essential military products to the front lines. Therefore, we understand that Kyiv is first and foremost interested in funding programs for the production of interceptor drones. Of course, there are other scenarios and other opportunities that Ukraine would like to obtain in exchange for supplying its own technologies and expertise, which we have gained during the full-scale Russian invasion, specifically in the context of drone production and in particular interceptor drones. There have been a significant number of official statements made recently regarding the potential strategic possibility of the complex process of exchanging Patriot missile systems for advanced interceptor drones from Ukraine. Ukraine has also discussed with Qatar the possibility of supplying Mirage 2000 aircraft, which are being decommissioned by that country. However, I personally believe that as things stand today, the overall prospects for providing such military supplies from various nations across the Middle Eastern region remain significantly unclear and highly uncertain. Because when considering the current intense level of regional escalation, these sovereign nations will be actively trying to safeguard and protect their own domestic airspace and critical infrastructure facilities. And I suspect they will likely be quite skeptical and hesitant regarding the actual possibility of exchanging or trading their own defensive capabilities for Ukrainian drones. But specifically in the context of scaling up Ukrainian production and purchasing both finished products made in Ukraine and directly funding Ukrainian enterprises. All of these are quite realistic scenarios, and I think that in the near future, Ukraine will be known in the region precisely as a leading manufacturer of interceptor drones.
Vladimir, look, I'll also redirect this question to you basically. Yes, I'll keep it simple, just simple, but still. Let me remind you that on our Telegram channel, as well as on our YouTube channel this evening, yes, we will conduct a poll like this among our viewers accordingly, and based on the information that Ukraine has signed a 10-year, yes, defense agreement with Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. And we are asking our viewers, how do you assess Kyiv's role in this partnership? There are answer options available. I will also read them out. Ukraine is now an exporter of security and expertise. That's the first option. The second, this is an important step towards weakening the Russia-Iran alliance. The third, these are investments in the Ukrainian defense industry and economy. And we also invite you to leave your own answer in the relevant comments. We will publish the poll both on the Freedom YouTube channel and on the Freedom Telegram channel, respectively. Vladimir, how would you answer this question?
I believe that looking at the situation broadly, the growing strategic interest shown by both Saudi Arabia and Qatar in acquiring interceptor drones from Ukraine will ultimately prevail. These countries have personally experienced the consequences of Iran's missile and drone attacks, and although today, judging by the statistics, we understand that Iran has significantly reduced the number of strikes, and now approximately up to 100 drones are launched per day at the Gulf countries, including Israel. But of course, first and foremost, we are talking specifically about Saudi Arabia and Qatar, as well as other countries in the region, other Persian monarchies. So I believe that if we examine this conflict in terms of a short time frame of just a few weeks, then Ukrainian drones cannot become a significant game changer at this stage. However, if we take a moment to carefully consider the broader strategic outlook for the coming months or even the next several years, and in all likelihood, this is precisely the specific time frame that the various countries within the region view as being the most realistic and practical. Then, of course, a very significant question inevitably arises regarding the urgent need to find ways to reduce the overall cost of effectively countering Iranian drones and missiles. And although Western countries are also moving in this direction, we can take as an example the British-made LM Martlet air-to-air missile system, which is actively used in the airspace of the Persian Gulf countries. In fact, this war serves as a kind of advertisement for this product, which, by the way, is already being supplied to meet Ukraine's needs. So the cost of a single missile is approximately £100,000, which is 3 times more than the cost of a single Shahed. And although this current development already represents a very significant trend toward reducing the overall cost of strike weapons when compared to the expensive Patriot system missiles, which typically cost anywhere from $3 to $5 million per individual unit, it is still, unfortunately, not enough to successfully wage a prolonged and sustained war against the current Iranian regime. And we fully recognize and understand that, given the complex and rugged geographical terrain of Iran, the regime in Tehran continues to maintain the strategic capability to store Shaheds and deploy their production within deep underground facilities. And this situation, of course, will represent a truly significant and formidable obstacle to the goal of completely and effectively eliminating the region's persistent missile and drone threats, emanating directly from the nation of Iran. Thus, it is my firm belief that in the upcoming months and the several years that lie immediately ahead, Ukraine will be able to successfully establish and secure its own specialized niche in the Middle East, specifically in the context of supplying advanced interceptor drones.
Absolutely. Volodymyr, thank you very much for the conversation and for joining our broadcast. Let me remind you that we were joined by Volodymyr Solovyov, head of the Hybrid Threat Analysis Group at the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center.